Namaste. Welcome to Mental Health and Wellness with Divya Hari. Our topic for today is mindfulness. To talk about mindfulness, we have with us today Ms. Anshita. Anshita holds a master's degree in Counselling Psychology. Let us welcome her on our show today. Hi Anshita, welcome on our show.
Hi, thanks for inviting me.
We spoke about mindlessness a lot of times, right? Mindlessness is nothing but the opposite of mindfulness, where a person is not engaging mentally in the activity that they are doing currently.
Right.
So for example, I might be talking to you right now, but I might be thinking, what should I cook for dinner tonight? Could you explain more about how mindlessness is prevalent in India, especially during our sessions?
Right. Like a funny thing is that the more busy and chaotic the country is becoming, and not just our country, like all the countries in the world, the more busy it's becoming, especially in the metropolitan cities. I'll give you an example, Divya. Even in Bangalore itself, when you head out of your house, there are so many things to focus on. Like even when you head towards the traffic signal, what do I pay attention to? The traffic lights, or the cars that are gonna hit me, or the horns that are honking, or the BMTC bus that has a really loud brake for some reason and never repaired. It's things like that. There's so many things to focus on at such a small brief time.
Like you mentioned, in that brief time, there's so much to do, but we are honking constantly, thinking about how we are late for work, or like when there's a traffic signal and we are waiting,
right.
People pull out their phones and scroll. So even there isn't a moment of mindfulness that we allow ourselves to take.
Exactly. There are thousands of things that are going on, especially now. The more we grow up, the more we realize there's so many things to focus on. And as I said, when you live in a metropolitan city, there's a lot more actually. That's why people in the cities are more mindless than people living in, a more calmer, more peaceful areas like in the rural areas. So that's the thing. That's such a big concern, because even in therapy sessions, when people come and approach me, a very common self-diagnosis that people have come and told me is that, Anshita, I think I might have ADHD.
Oh my God, yes.
Right? Yes. So the thing is, I really appreciate the self-awareness they have, that they feel like, okay, I am attention deficit maybe, and that's how they may be attributed to ADHD. I get that. But the thing is, maybe even though it's not a diagnosis per se, even if it's not an ADHD diagnosis, but I get the attention deficit part. It is because of the mindlessness that comes in when you start living a life without much mindfulness, and that happens. That definitely happens. And I feel like with age, that attention deficit part can increase if we are not consciously practicing mindfulness, right? So, because you end up getting things like your phone and all, and you have more reasons to be mindless. When we are younger, we don't get that. So, you get more reasons to be mindless, and it's very understandable that, a lot of clients come and say that, okay, maybe I do have ADHD. But maybe it's really a concern of mindfulness. That's why it becomes really important that even in your therapy sessions, you put in a lot of mindfulness-based activities. Even if it's something like making your bed in a very mindful manner, right? So
one thing you can also do is feeling objects, right? So that is one thing which I make my clients do. For example, when they have stress balls with them, feeling how the texture feels, observing the color, how they like the color, how they don't like the color of it.
Correct.
So one more thing we also introduce over here is when you're taking a walk, feeling the air against your body.
Right.
And actually activating your senses. You're moving your hands, you're smelling the air, you're feeling the air against your body,
right.
And you're also seeing things around you.
Correct.
Right?
Right. I think this is what we had talked about in one of our episodes of, where we were talking about the psychology of body and mind. We become so disconnected when we are mindless. So your mindfulness activities that you incorporate in your life is a way to connect back to the environment, right? So this is what mindfulness is about, and that's why you feel less anxious as a person. Your stress levels go down. You're better at decision making and regulating your emotions also, because of how mindfulness can change things in your brain. Maybe the structural aspects of brain may not change as much, but it still changes a lot of the brain activities and functioning within you. So I think it's something to take a note of.
Yeah, when you spoke about the brain structure, especially when it comes to hormones being secreted.
Right.
Right. So before we wrap up, could you tell us the mental health tip of the day?
We're already talking about mindfulness. I would love to say something related to mindfulness. One tip would be, for example, being mindful in the most routine activities that you do. So I would like to actually emphasize on eating, because mindful eating is something that we may be lacking right now. So when you're eating, try to observe what you're eating, the number of colors in your plate, how many colors are there, what the colors are, and if you even can categorize and narrow it down to what shades of the same color is it. All of that, like being mindful of the color, so using your sight. And then even if you're someone who eats food with your hands, I think eating food with your hand is amazing. It's one of the most beautiful yogic exercises also, wherein when you're even grabbing your food, you feel the texture of your food, its temperature also, and then when you're putting it in your mouth also, you see how it feels in your mouth. If it's very grainy or it's sweet or savory, so it really helps. So that would be the mindful tip.
That was a very helpful tip.
One another mindful tip that I can definitely put it out there for the audience, which is, even when you're doing any other activity, as I explained for mindful eating also, just take a pause. Like as I said during our conversation today, when you're even on call, with someone, when you actually even have a call coming in, don't pick up immediately. Give like a 2-second pause before you pick someone's call up. Notice who's calling you, like remember the person's face. Just give yourself a second of pause itself can help you make intentional choices, instead of doing it in an autopilot mode. So pause before doing anything at all, because not only that does that break the cycle of doing things by default or in autopilot, but it also really helps in giving yourself that gap before you intentionally do something, and also giving you that space to react the way you would like to, instead of like basically you're responding rather than you're reacting. So that is one of the most important tips that I can give away.
Thank you so much for those two very helpful tips, and thank you for educating us about mindfulness.
Right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
This was it about mindfulness. I will be back with another topic. Until then, take care, stay safe. Thank you.
Click on the bell icon to watch our latest videos.